Nerd Reviews, and today I'd like to talk to you about the 90% rule. I've seen this talked about in various maker channels and so forth. I've heard Adam Savage talk about it in his Tested channel, but essentially it's along the lines of in the creation of something, you can get about 90% of the way there in about 10 to 20% of the time. As far as the total time allotment in creating something is depending on how intricate you want to make it in terms of art and so on. But let's just say in the creation of a widget that if this widget takes a week to make all the way through, and it's a fairly intricate piece of art and so forth, that the widget will start to take shape and take form and get about 90% of the way complete in about 10 to 20% of the time. So let's just say the first day, it's going to look very much like a widget, and then the rest of the time is spent with the finer details to really bring it to life. So why am I bringing this up? Why am I talking about this crafting rule? Well, I'd like to talk to you about a 90% movie. The 2020 film, They Live Inside Us. Written, directed, shot, and edited by Michael Baloff. This is a fairly low-budget production that I would say is about 90% of the way there, but the devil really is in the details, and the quality is in the 10% that is missing. So this video is going to be a spoiler-free review that's talking about very generalized topics. If you want to get more into the weeds with this one, I'm also going to be having a Spoiled Rotten full deep dive into this film accompanying this video the same day. So if you're watching this and you're more interested in that, take a gander for it. I'll go ahead and provide a link below. So this movie follows the character of Jake, who is a father that is struggling with a writing project. He's having trouble getting something off the ground. And there's also a haunted house in which purportedly a witch lives there, and so it's the neighborhood kids kind of daring each other to go up and ring the doorbell kind of house. But regardless, Jake thinks that this would be a good idea to take his young daughter to in a Halloween night inspiration setting. So he goes in, takes all the sheets off of all the covered furniture and so on, and tries to draw inspiration from this house. From there, the movie kind of tackles the relationship that he has with his daughter, this unspoken about but kind of hinted at tragedy that befell them both at some point, and you know that it's going to come up in the future, as well as his stopping and starting stalled, failed writing project. And he doesn't have a whole lot going on for him in the writing front either. Despite the fact that he's in this house for inspiration, somehow he doesn't actually use it as inspiration and just plunks down his notes that he's already written and established and tries to think of ways to expand on them despite not having any real meat on the story idea entries and just bullet point generalized monster ideas. Nevertheless, the house proves to be a bit more surprising than he anticipated, and his relationship with his daughter kind of factors into that as well. So the whole thing kind of takes off from there. Now, what I will say is that this movie really did try, and it really did have, like I said, 90% of the way there. This was not a half-ass entry that was filmed with a potato. This actually looked fairly decent. The camera moved around a bit. It wasn't so static, and it wasn't boring on that front. But that's not to say that it wasn't boring generally, because unfortunately the story was fairly lackluster and predictable. As far as those sins specifically, how they happened, why they happened, and how they could be addressed to fix them in the future, that's the kind of thing that I'll be discussing in the Spoiled Rotten video. But just generally, I found this movie to be lacking any real interest, surprise, or characters that I latched onto in any way, shape, or form. So although I would really hesitate to say that this is a bad movie, because I really don't think that it was, I'm not going to go and make the claim that it was a good one either. I really think that this was just kind of a lower mediocre, pass it by if you don't really want to spend the time taking a chance with something that is probably going to bore you to tears. But that is different than an actively bad movie, or even a good bad movie. This is just more of a dull as dishwater kind of cinematic experience that goes on for an hour and 40 minutes or so until the end credits roll, and then you wonder why you just wasted your hour and 40 minutes. So am I being just a little bit harsh here? Am I treating this movie unfairly, considering that it did get 90% of the way there, and it really didn't look terrible, and it wasn't terribly acted and so on and so forth, and it wasn't actively bad? Well, the problem there is without that last 10%, it really does just become boring. And there's also another element that doesn't affect the score of this movie, but I wouldn't be able to sleep well at night if I didn't at least bring up, and that is ratings padding. I want to be absolutely clear. I fucking hate rating padding. And this is rife with it. And I don't know whether that's the director or the distributor to blame. I don't know. Maybe they hired a publicist that was just lacking any kind of scruples. But if you go onto IMDb and you check most of the early reviews, you have people giving this 9 and 10 stars with full-on reviews, calling it the best Halloween movie ever and really spooktacular for the season, must watch. It's that kind of bullshit that is just lies. And I hate it. If somebody saw this and they wanted to give it 10 stars, then this must be the only movie that they've seen in the last 25 years and they are starving for cinematic content. It is not worthy of it, period. I'm not saying that people aren't entitled to like it. If you like it, then that's fine. If one person decides to give it 10 stars, I'm going to disagree with them, but if they truly believe it, honestly, and they want to give it a good review and they thought it was just the bee's knees, then okay. But the fact that it started out with an absolute flood of 10 stars, raving reviews, I don't buy it, I don't see it, I don't like it. People use these ratings when they're trying to decide what to watch, and unfortunately, people have a finite amount of time on this earth. And not just time, but money. This isn't available on Tubi TV for ads and so forth. This is something you actually have to pay for. This is something that I paid for as a rental. And I did it based on the notion that this looked like it might have had some potential and it looked like it might have been something that was just kind of being passed over and maybe a bit of a hidden gem. And I was willing to give it that chance based on some of the reviews that I saw. And really, it only hurts the movie itself in the long run. If you had ratings that were honest and appropriate and gave it 4 to 6 stars, maybe 3, maybe 2, so on and so forth, then at the very least you're setting up a level of expectation that is realistic for the people that are wanting to seek something out. Sometimes people are just in the mood for mediocrity. Sometimes people just want to toss on a popcorn movie because, ooh, it has a spooky house and ooh, it has some Halloween vibes. That's fine. But when you're presenting them with that level of honesty and they kick it on and it winds up meeting their expectations or possibly even slightly lower, you're not really doing yourself any harm. You're kind of eliciting positive or honest feedback from folks. Well, I knew what I signed up for and I got it. Cool, I guess maybe I'll recommend it down the line for somebody else that was feeling the same as I did. But when you set up the level of expectation that this is a movie that is going to be earning all sorts of laurels and awards and going to hit the festival circuits and wow, and it's just going to knock people off their feet and people are going to be, this is going to go viral and it's just the best thing ever, and then they watch this, well, let's just say you're going to wind up with a video hitting YouTube just like this one. It's not worth it. You're only hurting yourself. Be honest at all costs. Treat your audience with the respect that they deserve by being an honest filmmaker or an honest distributor or an honest PR person at the very least. Yes, highlighting something and making it a little bit glossier than perhaps the actual reality, that's par for the course, especially for PR people. You're going to pick and choose and glean the positive reviews and the positive segments and so forth to put on the poster. Nobody wants to have a poster out there where it says, piece of shit, rotted reviews. Nobody's going to want that. That's totally understandable. But there's a difference between putting a little bit of a high shine on something and giving an actual shine job to the audience, and that's what happened here. That's why I'm railing against this. Again, that doesn't affect the score of the movie at all. I only score movies based on the content from between opening credits to end credits, and that's it. If it's the third in a trilogy, I don't score it based on the previous 2 entries. I don't score it based on anything other than the content of the film itself. However, outside of the score, just talking about what really irks me about this one, that's one of the bigger ones. So what's going to wind up happening now is this is the moment in which I would ordinarily try and find an audience that I would recommend this to. I would basically be saying something along the lines of, well, I really don't recommend this if you're wanting something really good and so on, but if you're in the mood for then I would recommend it to maybe that subset of folks. And you know what? I'm not going to do that. This has my blanket, do not recommend, just based on the PR stunt that this shit pulled. And with that, I think that should about do it. If you're actually interested in me dissecting the film based on its own merits and its own content, please look for the Spoiled Rotten video. Beyond that, I think that should about wrap this one up. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I look forward to seeing you on my next review. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.